In the 1960s, America was a nation torn apart by turmoil. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and political unrest had shaken the very foundation of the country. But amid this chaos, one man emerged as a beacon of hope, a man whose vision for a better America resonated with millions. That man was Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy was not just a politician. He was a symbol of the dream that America could rise above its divisions, heal its wounds, and unite under a banner of justice and equality. His commitment to social justice, his advocacy for the poor, and his passion for peace made him an icon for the disenfranchised. But tragically, that dream was cut short on June 5, 1968, in a moment that would forever alter the course of history. Born in 1925 to a prominent political family, Robert F. Kennedy's life was marked by public service from the very beginning. His older brother, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in 1963, a loss that left the nation reeling. But for Robert, it became the catalyst for his own political awakening. He understood the profound responsibility that came with the Kennedy name, and he began to realize that his place in history was not just to carry on his brother's legacy, but to forge his own path. After JFK's death, Robert became an ardent advocate for civil rights, the poor, and the disenfranchised. As Attorney General under his brother's administration, Robert fought tirelessly against organized crime, promoted the cause of justice, and stood by the civil rights movement. He marched alongside leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., lending his voice to the call for racial equality. Yet, it was when he entered the race for president in 1968 that he truly captured the heart of the nation. Kennedy's presidential campaign was a beacon of optimism during one of America's darkest hours. His speeches about hope, change, and unity resonated deeply with a public weary of war, political corruption, and division. He spoke about healing the wounds of a fractured nation and about a future where all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or background, could live together in peace and prosperity. His words were a lifeline for many who had lost faith in the government and in the American dream. But Kennedy's candidacy wasn't just about winning an election. It was about igniting a movement for peace, justice, and equality. His message transcended political boundaries and offered a new vision of America, a vision where compassion, understanding, and respect for one another were the pillars of society. He called for an end to the Vietnam War, a war that had divided the nation and claimed the lives of thousands of young men. He advocated for racial justice, and he called for policies that would help lift the poor out of poverty. In the months leading up to his candidacy, Kennedy had witnessed the civil rights struggles unfold in real time. He had heard the cries of the oppressed, and he felt the urgency of the moment. The disenfranchised were waiting for a champion, someone who would use their power and influence to create meaningful change. Robert F. Kennedy knew that he could be that champion, and in 1968, he set out to make that vision a reality. On the night of June 5, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy stood before a crowd of supporters in Los Angeles after winning the California primary, a crucial victory that seemed to pave his way to the Democratic nomination for president. His speech that night was full of emotion as he spoke to a crowd that had been with him from the very beginning, urging them to continue the fight for justice, peace, and unity. Kennedy's words were powerful, yet there was an underlying sense of tragedy in his voice. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred, he said. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion toward one another. These words would become prophetic, as just hours later, the world would be forever changed. It was after this impassioned speech that Kennedy left the stage, heading toward a press conference. Little did he know, it would be the last time he would ever speak to the public. As Kennedy made his way through the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, the unthinkable happened. Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian Arab, stepped forward from the crowd and fired a gun at Kennedy, hitting him in the head and chest. Chaos erupted as people scrambled to understand what had just transpired. Sirhan was quickly subdued, but the damage had already been done. Robert Kennedy was rushed to the hospital, but despite the efforts of the medical team, he died from his injuries a day later, on June 6, 1968. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy sent shockwaves through the nation. His death, coming just 5 years after the assassination of his brother, John F. Kennedy, left Americans in a state of grief and disbelief. It felt as though the country had lost its moral compass, a leader who could unite the divided factions of society and heal the wounds of the nation. Kennedy's death was not just the loss of a leader, it was the loss of hope. A sense of darkness seemed to descend upon the country. The civil rights movement, the fight against poverty, and the campaign for peace in Vietnam, all of these causes were left in limbo without their champion. The future seemed uncertain, and many wondered what could have been had Kennedy lived. But even as the nation mourned, questions began to arise. Who was Sirhan Sirhan, and what drove him to murder Robert Kennedy? Was he a lone gunman, or was there something more sinister at play? Sirhan claimed he was angry at Kennedy's pro-Israel stance, and his actions were driven by political motivations. However, some have speculated that there were other forces at work. Conspiracy theories about the involvement of powerful individuals or groups have persisted for decades, though no definitive evidence has ever been found to support these claims. Despite these lingering questions, the loss of Robert F. Kennedy still seemed senseless and tragic. Yet, despite the unanswered questions, one thing remained clear. Robert Kennedy's life and death left an indelible mark on American history. He was more than just a political figure. He was a symbol of what could have been. Though his life was tragically cut short, Robert Kennedy's legacy continues to inspire. His commitment to social justice, his advocacy for the poor and disenfranchised, and his fight for a better America are still remembered and honored today. Kennedy's legacy is carried on by organizations like the RFK Center for Justice and Human Rights, which works to improve the lives of people around the world and combat social injustices. His vision of a world rooted in compassion and peace lives on, even in the face of his untimely death. The RFK Center's initiatives to address issues such as racial inequality, human rights, and economic justice serve as a testament to the enduring impact of his work. Robert F. Kennedy's tragic assassination is a painful reminder of the fragility of hope. His campaign embodied the aspirations of millions of Americans who believed in the possibility of a better, more just world. His death, though devastating, did not extinguish that hope. It transformed it into a legacy that continues to fuel efforts for change to this very day. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy is a tragic chapter in American history, a story of a man who had the potential to change the course of a nation. While we will never know how much more he could have accomplished, we are left with the enduring spirit of his message. His death remains a poignant reminder that, in times of darkness, the light of hope and change can sometimes be extinguished too soon. But his legacy continues to burn brightly, inspiring new generations to fight for a better, more just world. And that, perhaps, is the truest testament to a life well lived.